Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday to you. Hope everybody's having a great day. Welcome to live Q&A number 15, and hope everybody's doing well today. I do have a couple of things on my mind I wanted to talk about before I get to your questions. First of all, for those who are asking, my wife is doing absolutely fine. For those who didn't know, she had a total knee replacement on her right knee Tuesday. And so that's one of the reasons why I haven't been posting standard weekly videos. I'm taking care of her and taking care of everything around the house. She's doing very well. She's up and moving around, probably not as much as she could be, but she's doing very well. So thank you, everybody, for all your support. We really do appreciate it. Um, the second thing is, as some of you know, I have a website, marklindsaycnc.com, which is sponsored by Harneal Media. You'll see Harneal Media out here in the live chat. Steve Nealon does one hell of a job for me. I mean, the guy's just absolutely dynamite. If you are a maker thinking about a website, I can't recommend him enough. I mean, he'll hook you up, he'll take care of you. He specializes in websites for makers and the makers community, and his pricing is not enough as far as I'm concerned, but his pricing is very reasonable for makers on a maker's budget. He doesn't charge bazillions of dollars to get you set up, and he can hook you up with what you need. If you want an online shop, if you want an online store, he can do it. Believe me, he'll hook you right up. But anyway, in my online store, I have 3 free CNC patterns that, I hesitate to call them CNC patterns. They're DXF files. I offer 3 free DXF files, and they've been downloaded quite a bit. As of this morning, they have been downloaded 4,400 times. And that's cool. That's great. But my question for you all is, number one, has anybody here in the chat right now downloaded any of those DXF files, those designs? And number two, if you have you made anything with them? I was looking at it this morning. I get an email every time somebody downloads one. I get a notification because it comes to me as if somebody has placed an order. And I'm like, wow, 4,400 people, more than 4,400 people have downloaded those designs. Has anybody made anything with them? So if you have, I'd like to hear about it. Let me know what you made, because that's the whole reason for putting them up there, is for somebody to make them. Now, they're very simple things. I mean, one of them is just an 8-ball from a billiard ball set. Another one is, I called it a corner clamp. It's actually a little jig for placing inside a 90-degree corner and clamping it in place to hold that 90-degree corner while glue sets or cures. And the other one is a design from one of my videos called a spiral tornado. And I just wondered if anybody had ever cut anything with any of those. So let me know if you have. That was all. And that was my question to you. So let's go down the list here and see who we got dropping in today. Greg Dent. Good morning to you. Mr. Tim Belt. And I am not going to attempt to butcher your name. I believe it's Eyal Peleg. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Welcome aboard. Bob Hiltebridle, the man himself, poster of some of the funniest memes on Facebook. David Kraus, she's doing very well. Thank you for asking. David Crook. Did I pass anybody? Steve Nealon, the above mentioned killer dude from Harneal Media. Kevin Els, John DeRoos, Johnny from J5 Fabrications. Y'all, you see J5J Fabrications there over in the chat. If you are thinking about, if you have a Gatton CNC, thinking about one, or if you just like CNC stuff, if you're a CNC nerd like me, hit them three dots right next to his name. Right click, open a new tab so you don't leave this, and check out his channel. Give him a sub. He does some good stuff over there. He gets deeper into the details and does an excellent job at it, I might add. Jose Rodriguez, Colin McCourt, Steve Late, Chad M, Benji Long, Jill Knight. You must ask me a question. That's what we're here for. Jim Hester, how you doing? Okay, let's see. Uh, when we get into the questions here, Tim, let me make sure I got the right one here. Tim Belt. Okay, he asked a question way back before we even went live. He said, getting ready to prep a brand new spoil board. Laguna Swift 4x8 with vacuum. How deep do you do a fresh board for skinning it the first time? I'm thinking 10 thousandths or so. I'm still very new to this, setting up the program as I wait. There are a couple of different ways you can go about doing it. One is the guess and hope method, and the other way is pretty technical. It's mounting a dial indicator in your spindle and running it around the spoil board to find the lowest spot on your spoil board, and then set up your surfacing pass to cut down about 10 thousandths beyond that low spot, and do it in steps, however deep you want to run it. I don't know your setup, I don't know your machine. So the guess and by gosh method is just start knocking off 20 or 10 thousandths per pass. What I did, and it took a couple of minutes, what I did was I just took a standard pencil and drew pencil line all the way across the spoil board, then went down 20 thousandths on the first pass, and then 10 thousandths after that until all that pencil was gone. So much like running a piece of stock through a planer, just some pencil line on it, run it through the planer and keep going until the pencil line's gone. Same way with the spoil board. But using the dial indicator to find the lowest point on your spoil board and then machining down to about 10 thousandths below that level is how I do it anyway. And then after that, if I'm going to resurface it, I just zero to the top of the spoil board and machine off 10 thousandths, and I figure I'm good. If I've still got some deep gouges in there that are in a critical place, I'll go another 10. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see. And Greg Dent, loved your two-sided machining video. Thank you very much. Okay, Ayal has a question about the Gatton CNC. Only when I tried to buy it, it turned out that Dave doesn't ship outside the US and Canada, and I am from Israel. I'm trying to talk about it with Dave, but would appreciate any suggestions. I don't have any suggestions, I'm sorry to say. If you Google CNC plans, you will find a ton of different options out there. You can kind of take a look at them. Just email Dave through his website and talk to him. Maybe you can come to some sort of an arrangement, but I would also warn you that probably half of the parts and supplies that you would need to build a Gatton CNC are probably not going to be available in Israel either. So I don't know what benefit any kind of a plans that he could send you would be to you. You might want to look into one of the other lower cost alternatives, be it a Bob CNC or maybe something from Open Builds or Ox Builds or something like that. The problem is just simply shipping, importing, and exporting. I know it's a rough situation, but that's just the way it is. I'm sorry. Um, I got into questions and totally, completely forgot. And shame on me for this. Speaking of Dave Gatton and the Gatton CNC, Dave Gatton is hosting the third annual Gatton CNC Christmas Challenge. Now, if you watch any YouTube makers for any amount of time, you know that a lot of times they have various different woodworking challenges. We have the 2x4 challenge, we have the birdhouse challenge, we have the pallet wood challenge, all of these various things. And most of the challenges out there are they frown on CNC. They don't like CNC because they don't believe it's real woodworking, whatever that means. So Dave decided what he was going to do was he was going to come up with a challenge strictly for CNCers. So the 2019 Gatton CNC Christmas Challenge started Black Friday. That was this last Friday, November the oh boy, what was that? November the 29th. And it is strictly for CNC folks. Now, it doesn't have to be made on a Gatton CNC. You can make it on a CNC router, you can make it on a CNC mill, you can make it on a 3D printer, if you have a CNC plasma, whatever your chosen mode is, but the project must be made on a CNC. And you'll find more information and complete rules at the link down in the description to the Gatton CNC Challenge. They've got some good prizes. The deadline is Christmas Eve. I believe he said 11:59 Eastern Time, U.S., December 24th. So you have between now and then to come up with a design, shoot some video of it, post it on YouTube and or Facebook and get it to him. I believe he said Facebook. Don't quote me on that. Again, hit the link and check out the rules and get it posted for your chance to win some good prizes. And there's some good sponsors coming up on board to offer some good prizes. It's open to anyone, anywhere. Dave doesn't play that US only shipping thing. So it's a perfect opportunity for us CNC folks to get in on some of this contest and prizes thing. And Dave's a good guy, believe me. Okay, so let's go back over here to the questions. Let's see. Jim Hester, I rubbed chalk on my new spoil board, then surfaced it 10,000 per passes until the chalk was gone. That's basically what I did, Jim. Okay, let's see. Jill Knight, do you have a video that shows the complete workflow from beginning to end of importing a model, then setting tool paths, then doing the V-carve? I do. In fact, it is the two-sided machining video, part 1 and part 2. I'll put a link in the description. I did one very simple 3D model, and then I did a composite model series where I took 2 or 3 different models from the Vectric clip art, imported them into the project, combined them, then calculated tool paths. Then in the next video, I showed some changes I made to those tool paths. Then I cut the project. I don't believe I've done anything. I have done a video on importing a model. I'll put a link to that in the description. But I don't believe I've done anything where I imported a model, then went through all the steps to calculating the tool paths and then taking it outside and cutting. I did do a video on importing an STL file and calculating tool paths, but I didn't take that outside. So I'll put links in the description to all of those videos. Some of them may be playlists because, as I say, there's 2 or 3 videos in the series, because otherwise it would have been a 3-hour video and ain't nobody got time for that. So let's see. Let's see here. Tim Belt, no dial indicators, so getting out the chalk and pencil. Thanks. Okay, yeah, it does work. So let's see. Tell Dave that his contact does not work. I'll let him know. Jim Finlayson. Hi, Mark. Newbie here from Scotland. Thanks for the tutorials. Brilliant, mate. Thank you very much, Jim. I do appreciate that. Let's see. I did check. Okay, from Ayal, I did check that at least the most important parts I can get from different sellers on Amazon. Okay, yeah. I basically I would keep trying to get a hold of him. I will let him know that there's somebody having a problem with his contact us. He did just update and change his website a little bit, so he may not be aware of that issue. But I'll let him know. Let's see, Tim Belt, could you link to the contest also, please? That's exactly what I mean. The rules and all the information for the contest on how to enter are already in the description, right over, I think it's down there. So it's all right there. So let's see, do we have any other questions? It doesn't look like anybody has made any of my made any projects using those patterns. But that's cool. I was just wondering. Now, I had an idea for one of those patterns. Let's see what y'all think about this. One of them is the Spiral Tornado DXF. And in fact, I posted that there to give away free because I used that in a video on importing DXF files. What I was thinking about, I had an idea for a project for that. What I was thinking of was getting some black acrylic and cutting out some 1/4-inch black acrylic and cutting out that Spiral Tornado, and then placing a mirror behind that and putting the whole thing in a frame, in a black frame. I just thought that would be kind of cool. I don't know, maybe I'll do that. We'll see what happens. So, Pradeep Datta, greetings from Berlin. Greetings. Jill Knight, thank you, Mark. I've learned a lot from your videos so far. Thank you very much, Jill. I'm glad to hear that. I really am. Stephen Osborne, hi, Mark. Newbie, I'd like a quick breakdown on when you use upcut versus downcut bits on my E4. Okay, basically the thing to think about is when, number one, never ever use a downcut bit to drill a hole straight down. Okay, if you're using a 1/4-inch bit to drill a 1/4-inch hole, make sure it's an upcut bit. If you're using a 1/4-inch bit to drill a 5/16 inch hole, so the bit's going to be spiraling, then you're okay. The reason for that is a downcut bit slices the fibers downwards and tries to eject the chips down. If there's no room for those chips to blow back out of that hole, friction will build up. You're trying to force more chips down into that hole as the bit's trying to cut, and friction will build up and you will start a fire. Now, I don't say that as somebody who has heard that from a friend. I say that as a guy who did it. I started a fire drilling straight down, drilling a 1/4-inch hole with a 1/4-inch downcut bit, not knowing any better. I was very new to CNC. In fact, it was like my first or second project. And on about the second hole, the bit lifted out and burning embers come flying out of that hole. I looked and saw smoke, hit the panic button, shut everything down, dumped my soda on the material, unscrewed it, took it off of the table, and my MDF spoil board was burning. It was smoldering and glowing. Dumped the rest of my Pepsi on it, and that was the end of that. Do not drill holes straight down with a downcut bit. Use an upcut bit. Other than that, the thing to remember is the surface. Which surface matters? An upcut bit is going to eject chips upwards and out. It's also going to tend to lift an edge of the cut. It'll want to splinter up this way. So if the top surface matters, if that's the showing side, I tend to use a downcut bit. If the bottom surface is the side that's going to show, I'll use an upcut bit. Now you can also get compression bits, which are a combination of the two. The bottom, maybe 1/4 of an inch, is upcut, and the top, the rest of it, is downcut, and the center is kind of a mishmash of both of them, kind of a combination of the two. The only problem with that is you have to plunge them pretty deep to get any benefits. That way both surfaces are good, but you have to plunge it past that upcut portion so that it doesn't splinter up that top surface as it's cutting through. So basically, if the top surface is going to be visible and that's the surface you want to look nice, I use a downcut bit. If the bottom is the surface that you want to look nice, I use an upcut bit. And I always use an upcut bit for drilling holes. So, let's see. Tim Belt, in my humble opinion, the reason old woodworkers did not use CNC or anything is modern. They did not have them. They used the most modern tooling they had. Yeah, there's some truth to that. But some people also see it as quote-unquote cheating. Now, if you have the talent, the skills to get in there with chisels and carve something out, I salute you. I don't have that talent. I don't have those skills. But this argument's been going on for years and years and years. They'll tell me that a CNC is cheating, then set up a dovetail jig and use a hand router. It's like, well, come on, how come you're not using a dovetail saw and chisels like someone like Paul, I just blanked on his name, Paul Sellers, something like what he would do. We all have our own little levels of cheating. Personally, I see a CNC as a free assistant, a free employee that's not going to bring drama to work. It can be cutting something out while I'm sanding or working on something else. That's just my opinion. So, let's see. Thank you, Johnny. No, I did not see that Colin McCord had asked the same question about, conventional and climb cutting. Okay, I did a video on conventional versus climb cutting. I'll put a link to that in the description. The basic synopsis is whichever you prefer. I'll show the benefits and the advantages and disadvantages to both in that video. I'll put a link in the description as soon as this goes live. So, and I apologize. Thank you, Johnny, for bringing that to my attention. I apologize, Colin. I did not see it. Let's see. Jeff Lowell, love your videos. Have learned a lot. Are you going to do any more on K40 lasers? No, I'm not, Jeff. That K40 laser that I got was so freight damaged that it could not be aligned. And I sent it back. And when they got it, they confirmed it. In fact, the guy said that was so bent out of shape, he was surprised I got it working at all. So I decided, based on my limited experience with it, I decided the K40 was too small for what I wanted to use. So I am saving my pennies to build or buy a bigger laser after I get my shop built next year. So I don't plan on doing any more K40 laser videos. I'm sorry about that. Okay, Joe Martinez, first time here. Thank you for your videos. I'm trying to learn how to use VCarve, and you've been lots of help. Well, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. Just get into it and use it. I mean, if it's even if something as simple and silly as put your name into text, convert it to curves, and play around with those curves. Make new vectors, change shapes, learn how to control it and how to use it. And don't forget the Vectric tutorials. They are very, very good tutorials. So, Greg Dent says MDF I use upcut and drilling holes, plywood milling, and wood I use downcut to stop chipping and splintering on the project. Yeah, that is that's valid, Greg. I tend to use downcut most of the time. Um, but that's just the kind of machining I do. It really depends on what all you're doing. So let's see. Ayal Peleg making a train part 2 CNC nuts episode 64 also talks about some usage for using downcut bits when cutting without using tabs. Um, First of all, Peter Pasuelo over there at the CNC Nuts channel is the absolute first YouTube CNCer I subscribe to. I was been fortunate enough to meet him online through various hangouts, through Dave Gatton and doing his live streams. He's one heck of a guy who knows his stuff. If you're not subscribed to the CNC Nuts channel, you really should be. You're missing out. I wholeheartedly agree. He's a very, very good guy, and he knows what he's talking about. I learned so much from him. It's I can't even quantify it. So the only thing to watch out for is when he talks about using downcut bits when cutting without tabs. Is he can get away with that because he's using a much smaller bit. I believe he's using a 3mm bit. I may be wrong there. Whereas I tend to cut with a 1/4 inch bit. And for material that's about 3/4 of an inch thick, a 1/4 inch bit just cuts too big of a uh, too big of a kerf to get away with what he does. So just be careful with that. Let's see. Scott Ferncum. I hope I didn't just butcher your name. I just got a Genmitsu 3018 Pro. I'm wondering if there's a guide somewhere that have rust estimates on what typical depths and speeds bits can handle on different kinds of wood. That's kind of an up in the air type of a thing. The general rule of thumb is not to cut deeper than half of the bit's cutting diameter. So if you have a 3mm cutting diameter on a bit, your pass depth, your depth per cut, or per pass rather, shouldn't be more than half of that, so 1.5 millimeters. I tend to run on the conservative side, a little bit less than that. So, but, and as far as speeds are concerned, as I've explained many times before, I don't use any speed or feed calculator because every piece of material is different. And sometimes a piece of material can be different in the same piece of wood. So what I do is I start conservative, and then with my setup I can bump up my feed rate on the fly, and I listen and I watch how it's cutting, and the material will tell me how fast it wants to be cut at. And when I start to get a little bit of chatter, or if I hear it starting to struggle a little bit, I'll back it down. Now I know that doesn't help you a lot. You have to kind of train your ear for what to listen for and what to watch for. But I may cut a piece of hard maple at 120 inches per minute. I may end up cutting it at 45. It's going to tell me what it wants to do. And I listen for it and, just kind of go from there. So I'm not a lot of help for that. Let's see. Let's see, Jim Hester. I don't mean this as being a smart aleck, but I recommend turning on the English subtitles on Vectric videos. Their accents can be hard to understand sometimes. You know, Jim, this is just me talking here. I watch a lot of British TV, but I don't find their accents to be difficult at all. And if you've watched some of their newer videos, they have an American and a Canadian making tutorials for them now. So, yeah, you can use the closed captions, and that's one of the reasons why I closed caption my videos, is so if folks find me difficult to understand or didn't really understand what I said in particular in a particular phrase, they can look at the closed caption and go, "Oh, that's what he meant." So, but yeah, closed captioning is great. I mean, I had a conversation with a deaf woman online who asked about it because I wasn't closed captioning my videos. And I thought, well, she's not the only one that needs that. And after looking at some of my analytics, right at about 15% of the people who watch my videos use those closed captions. So I think it's valuable. Just as you're watching the video, hit that little CC symbol down there at the bottom of the video, and the closed captions come up. And yes, I do edit them and write them myself. So let's see. Steve Martin says, I like the way you talk to your viewers in your videos and not at them. Thank you, Steve. I try to imagine somebody sitting next to me, and I speak slowly because I'm the guy who has to do the closed captioning, and that helps me. Basically, I'm lazy. So, let's see. Everyone talks about VCarve and Aspire. How does Fusion 360 compare to them? I have no experience with the first two, but do know some level of Fusion 360. If you are used to Fusion 360, then by all means keep going. A lot of people find Fusion 360 to be very confusing to start with, and it does have a steep learning curve. That being said, for what most of us do, Fusion 360 is like using a sledgehammer to drive a thumbtack. Don't get me wrong, it's an excellent program. It's excellent software. And for what it is designed to do, it's perfect. But it's a pretty big hammer for what most home hobby CNCers are doing. If you're well versed in it, by all means stick with it. Um, the main reason folks get into VCarve and Aspire is for just simply put ease of use. I mean, when I want to VCarve some text, I click a button to select the font, type in the text, select that text, go over to the toolpaths and click VCarve toolpath, choose my bit, calculate the toolpath, and it's done. And it takes just that long. It really does. It's ease of use. It's simple, relatively simple. I was introduced to the PC and AutoCAD in the same week of 1997. And I've forgotten more about AutoCAD than I ever learned. My point in bringing this up is I'm not an expert on any software, but I am an expert on trying to learn software. And Cut 2D, VCarve, Desktop and Pro, and Aspire probably has the gentlest learning curve of anything I've ever tried to learn. At the beginning, it's very pricey, but after using it for a few years, you wonder how they sell it so cheap. So that's just one man's opinion. If you're well versed with Fusion 360, by all means stick with it. So. Let's see. Stephen Osborne, excuse me, on the VCarve desktop are the default feeds and depths a good starting point for my very first CNC program. I'll probably be using Pine. Two things. Number one, though any numbers that are in the speeds and feeds category down there where you've got feed rate and plunge rate, any numbers in there are basically placeholders. you're going to need to change those numbers for your machine. Um, and this is the main reason I don't use feed calculators and RPM calculators. Most of this stuff was designed for industrial machines, not the average home hobby machine. Now, you may have a machine that's capable of running at 300 inches per minute. I don't. You may have a machine that's capable of cutting through 3/4 inch plywood in one pass. I don't. You probably won't know that until you try it, though. So, generally speaking, um, I start at something conservative like 60 inches per minute, and I see how it cuts from there. So, um, start conservative because you can always speed up. But if you try to go in whole hog and plunge too deep too fast or start moving too fast, that's how bit breakage happens. And that's how machine damage happens. There are some folks out there that'll tell you, well, if you're not breaking bits, you're not learning anything. Well, by that same logic, then that means you don't know how to drive until you've totaled 3 cars. I don't believe that. I've never broken a bit cutting. I've broken them by dropping them, but I've never broken a bit cutting. And that's because I start conservative and then speed it up and listen for that router. Is it struggling? Am I hearing chatter? And then back it down 10, maybe 20%, and let it run. The material will tell you. Second point will be you're going to be probably using pine, you said. Be warned, pine is a very difficult wood to cut. And the reason for it is the annular rings in pine are very hard and brittle. Excuse me. And the wood fibers in between are very soft and spongy. It'll rip out, it'll chip out, it'll tear out. And it's very difficult to get a clean carve using pine. I know it's inexpensive wood. It's very cheap, very easy, but it's also very difficult to cut. I started with just scrap woods. I cut some pine, but my first few projects, I got on the free section of Craigslist and just started looking for pieces of wood that people were getting rid of. You know, things that were headed for the landfill. And I cut up easily 100 fence boards, learning how to use my CNC. Most of them are cedar, another softwood, but not as picky as pine. And I can usually get a good finish out of that. But, excuse me again. Just know that pine is a difficult wood to cut. It looks deceiving. So if you can find some inexpensive hardwoods, maple is one of my go-tos, and it's not super expensive. Now, I don't know where in the world you are, so this is all relative. But for me, maple is fairly inexpensive. You can sometimes find poplar at some of the big box home improvement store, but I think you'd be a little bit happier trying to carve on a hardwood because it's more realistic. Even carving MDF is more realistic than trying to carve pine. Now, there's some guys that can get some excellent finish out of pine. If you can find flat sawn pine doesn't really work that well. Something closer to quarter sawn it's still going to kind of want to shred and chip and tear, but it's easier to work with than something flat sawn. So let's see. Tim Belt, biggest reason I use Aspire, it came with my machine. Well, if you've priced it, that is a very good motivator. So, Steve Martin, watching from the UK, and your accent is only slight and perfect. Thank you very much, Steve. I've been practicing all my life. The right people will get that. Be glad I'm not like Ross Noble. I would be alone a lot. Let's see. Thank you. I appreciate your experience and willingness to take time and explain things. You remind me a bit of Steve Ramsey from Woodworking for Mere Mortals. I don't know how to take that, Scott, but I'll take it. Thank you. Let's see. So back to real quick to Stephen Osborne. The default feeds and depths, set your depth of cut to less than half of the bit's cutting diameter, and back off of the feed a little bit and see where it goes. So let's see. Edward Henry, I'm still trying to decide which Vectric software to save for, VCarve Pro or Aspire. Will take months to save for the CNC hardware to get it assembled, so no rush. Tell you what you do, Edward. Two things here. Number one, get in and download the VCarve free trial and start playing with it. You cannot start learning the software too soon. The best time to start learning the software is yesterday. Okay? And just get in and play with it. Do a few things. There are some free, you'll have to start a V& Company account, but there are some free projects through the Vectric site, some of which you can cut with the trial version. Just look for that little icon that says trial friendly. And just get in and play. So it's very user friendly. Second thing is, one of the beautiful things about Vectric is if you purchase their software, let's say you buy VCarve Desktop, then in a year you decide you want to upgrade to VCarve Pro. You do not pay the full retail price. You pay the difference in price. So they credit you what you paid for VCarve Desktop. Then the price you'll pay for that upgrade is the difference between Desktop and Pro. And it's the same thing if you go to upgrade to Aspire. It's the difference in price between VCarve Pro and Aspire. You don't pay the full retail price for it. So they're a real good company. They support their product very well. So let's see here. Bob Heltebridle, sitting here watching you 2 hours into a 4.5 hour project. Another walnut badge. Salute, Bob. I mean, guy does some excellent work. He doesn't post nearly enough of it. And I feel you. Been there. Let's see. Upstate, Stephen Osborne, upstate New York. Plenty of hardwoods available. Yeah, I envy you. I'm on the Pacific Northwest. We're in softwood country. So, let's see. To short answer, Greg, no, I don't mind. Let's see. Edward Henry, should you plane word prior to using on the CNC or use the CNC to surface it flat to the machine prior to doing your project? Yes, you can do either. If you have a planer, it's faster to use a planer. That's the thing about a CNC. It's not always the perfect tool for the job. Running it through a planer is a lot faster. You can just see over my shoulder, I've got 2 pieces of lace wood that I'm going to be carving some Christmas presents with, and I'm going to have to run it through the planer. I could mount it on the CNC and flatten it that way, but the planer is just faster, and I can better control how much I want to take off. So you can do either, whichever you prefer. To me, the planer is much faster, and I'm going to get the same result, basically. Okay, let me go ahead and take this last one from Krister Nyholm, and then we'll start wrapping this up. Let's see, using Cut2D software for some years now. I have tried other free ones, but Cut2D the best all times. In future, Cut 3D later. Greetings from Finland. Well, thank you for joining from Finland. I've not used Cut 2D. I have played with the trial to see what options are in it. And if you are doing mainly 2-dimensional work, cutting out shapes and profiles, it's perfect for the job. So, All right, let's see. Bob Helta Bridle, my planer is 13 inches wide. Most projects are wider. True that. I have used my CNC to plane, but if it's small enough, I've got a 13-inch planer as well. If it's small enough to use the planer, that's what I use. So, Donald Lee, hey Mark, thought you were taking some time off till the new year. I am. I'm going to keep the Sunday live Q&As going though. I'm just taking a break from the weekly videos until the new year. And as soon as I have my wife healthy and literally on her feet, I'll be back in the shop, which is why that laced wood is still sitting there and not already projects made. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Just to remind everybody again about the Gatton CNC Christmas Challenge. There's a link in the description to the page on Dave's website with the rules and how to enter the challenge. And get in on this one, guys. It's for us CNCers only. And again, it can be a CNC router, a CNC mill, a CNC plasma table if that's what you have, a 3D printer. It just has to be CNC. So get in on it. It's for a Christmas themed project. You've got until 11:59 December 24th to get the project made and videoed and posted. And it's really worthwhile. It's a lot of fun. So, once again, I want to thank Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media for sponsoring MarkLindsayCNC.com. If you haven't visited, it's been a while since I've updated. I'm working on it. Get over there, check it out. There, as I say, are 3 free DXF files for you to download. If you want to keep following along with what I'm doing here, it's going to be strictly live shows until the new year. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell there, Mr. Donald Lee. Then you'll know when I go live. You'll get a notification. So, not meaning to call you out, but hey. All right. Want to say thank you very much to everybody for joining me. Have a great Sunday. Get out there and make some chips. Y'all take care.